CJ Peterson, and welcome to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share our portion of their hearts. Today, my guest is CK Donnelly, and we're going to be talking something unique. We titled the podcast, It All Begins with a Map, The Passion of World Building. Thank you for coming on today, CK.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and we're going to have a real fun conversation. Like you said, it's kind of unique.
It is unique. I'm an author as well. So, I kind of understand the basic premise, but mine goes on at this particular time. Yours doesn't. Yours is a completely different world. And I have a couple of friends that are fantasy writers, and I just do not know how they do this. How do you come up with it?
That is a great question. And it's so funny that the title of the podcast is It All Begins with a Map, because for me, it really did just begin with a map. I had my system of magic. I was working on it and kind of fleshing out my characters a little bit. And I wanted to know where everything was taking place. I needed to understand the story in a broader view.
You kind of like a visual.
Right. It really was. It was a map for me, if you will. And to be able to see how there are 9 provinces, okay, so instead of states, provinces, and to see what they were like and how they would interact and what's the terrain and geography, because all of that has a way of blending into the plot and will affect certain things, so it's very different to march over hard prairie soil than it is climbing a mountain, for instance. And it's, it has timing and pacing, and all that reflects back into the story.
Interesting. So we're going to kind of steer off of that for just a little bit. On your site, you have a quote that stood out to me when I was kind of looking through it. So for those who are listening, yes, I do research my guests. Anyway, on there, it said, passion, prayer, and perseverance almost always lead you to achievement. Can you explain what that means?
I wish to say that there isn't really any deeper levels than that, but it's true. I mean, your passion and your perseverance, and I'm a faithful woman. I am a Catholic ever since I was born, and those things all wrap together to get us through our journeys as writers. It's difficult. You're putting your naked self out on the page in words. People don't realize how vulnerable it is to write anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm still trying to develop a thick skin, but all of that passion, perseverance, and
well, I'm 13 books in, 13 novels in, a children's book, and I've been in 2 anthologies. So it takes a little bit. The beauty of people who read you, and when somebody reads your book, they understand your heart and they understand who you are at a core, which may sound strange to some, depending on the writer, because some of them are a little twisted. Face it, I have some who are.
We won't name names.
I have some who are, and they know it, and they kind of relish in that. It lets them play in their darker side. But when you're putting your work out there, you're putting, like you said, a piece of your heart. It's the same thing as an artist putting out the piece of canvas, a musician playing in front of a crowd. It's the same fear, the same anxiety, the same terror of, are they going to accept it? Because in essence, they're accepting part of you when they accept
exactly.
Your work.
And sometimes, I mean, we are definitely artists of the same vein as those in other medium, but we have to create our block of marble first as a writer. I've often said this, that being the rough draft before we can create a masterpiece. And that makes what we do a little bit different. So, but yeah, absolutely. It's all about being vulnerable. And if something doesn't go well, do you have an inner strength where you're drawing that from? For me, it's my faith to rise above that.
Definitely. So you've got your map. You have a pretty good idea of what terrain looks like, what terrain, and how do you make that leap from the map into the world? Because like I said, I have a couple of friends who are fantasy writers, and it's they're literally creating an entire different world, sometimes different species within that world, different languages, different, so much.
Yes.
How do you do that?
It's funny. I based it on bits and pieces of our world.
Mhm.
So if you look closely at the map, and here we're talking visual things like you told me not to do on a podcast, it looks something like Australia twisted on its side, so it's longer north south than east west, and it's got a little
Kinda like
appendage that's
Ireland.
kind of like Florida.
So it's kind of like
And so
Ireland.
yeah, I took actual places. So I'm like, okay, what's the coastline would we be like at this latitude? So okay, it would be warm and tropical. Another place would be, cold or whatever. And so when you're then get into writing the story
Mhm.
and you go to a plains province, let's say, or and you're in the middle of the battle and it's raining. Well, what happens to the battlefield then when you're on this kind of terrain? And how does it impact the story? So it's all kind of blended together. So it lends itself to how the characters interact with one another and their environment. And it just makes it so much more organic and so much more real.
So how do you determine like what language goes with which people and what status they are, social level? How do you determine all of that?
I did create my own language. I think with the vernacular they call it the conlang. Um, I drew that from, well, it's like an ancient version, like we have Latin, let's say. It's almost a dead language in their time frame now, but people speak bits and pieces of it and whatnot. I thought also having a language again made the world seem real that I created, that time has evolved and there is a sense of culture and what's going on. And you'll find that the older generations tend to maybe speak a word or two or a sentence or two in the conlang, as opposed to the younger ones who don't use it as much, which kind of makes a lot of sense. The differences in society. I am a huge Star Wars fan, so
I'm with you.
huge. If I wasn't Catholic, I'd be Jedi.
Well, it's
So
like that, and my brain is flashing to like the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and Star Wars and Star Trek for that matter, because they go to worlds never explored before.
right,
There's all
right.
sorts of different sci-fi things to draw from, but from what I'm following you to kind of think, where are they technologically wise? Are they like the 1800s? Are they like the 20s, the 50s, the 2000s? Where are they?
No, it takes place in kind of your traditional epic fantasy, so it's kind of a medieval time frame, 1100 to 1300 AD,
Mhm.
and it's based on a backstory of a Star Wars fanfic I had. I had a very minor character in there. She was pivotal.
Mhm.
And people said, oh, your fanfic's really good, but you're never going to get anywhere unless you write your own.
Mhm.
So I thought, what elements of Star Wars do I like the most? What about magic? And so the whole kind of concept of a Jedi, a kind of warrior priest is a trope. And so I took that out of the highly technologically driven science fiction world and put it in an epic fantasy world, like I said, in his flavors of
But kind of
the
like
Middle
Merlin.
Ages. And and
So
because that's
that
what
character
I liked. Yeah.
kind of like Merlin then, where he's kind of not in the right time, but
Yeah. Well, not really. It just, but I thought, okay, what elements from Star Wars that I love can I take, adapt, and put in my own unique, completely unique, developed story.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of where that began. And so I
Now, for the most part, most writers are either planners or pantsers. I'm a pantser. I sit down, pray, write, and run the story. You have to have a little bit of an element with it when you're creating fantasy, but when you actually have everything kind of sorted, is your story planned out or is the actual storyline a pantser?
No, I am a plotter. You'll take my bulleted outline out of my cold dead hands before I start panting.
Those people
But
get
you
too
know
high.
what? It's
I like
actually a
the freedom and
misnomer.
flexibility of the pantser, but most planners give pantsers hives. Most pantsers give planners hives. So it's like,
But you know what? It's really kind of a misnomer because at
mhm.
some point, even you go through editing the structure and
When it's all
putting
said and
something
done, yes.
very straight. And for me, each bullet point, yeah, maybe it's in some sort of outline, but to think of that bullet point is completely pantsing.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's okay, what happens next, and what happens next, and what I like it is because then I can work things out and I can see things in small couple sentences, paragraphs. So if something isn't working or like, oh, I forgot I have to do this, I don't have to rewrite an entire chapter. I just have to rearrange things or edit up a thing. And I don't feel shackled by the outline at all. Because as we all know, when you're a writer, your characters will write the story oftentimes. Oh,
Yep.
I didn't think of going, I was thinking a right turn and they took a left turn and it's a turn and it's always so
Yeah,
much
my
better.
theory is as long as it doesn't go against the character, then we're good. We just keep on
Right.
going with the flow wherever it takes us. And I've, I write them as if I'm watching a movie. I'm ADD and
Yeah.
OCD.
Yeah.
And so, if I hit a point where I'm bored, I can just X out that scene and take it out.
Yeah. I
Go to
exactly.
something else.
I am taking dictation of the movie I have in my head.
Yeah. And so it's like when you're going through it and you're writing and you're creating it, it's like you're creating a world of fantasy. Mine is in this realm, but
Mhm.
mine deals a lot with the paranormal, or in the trilogy I'm currently writing, it has to do with sci-fi. So it is kind of the same theories in the fact that I do have to create certain things, and
Mhm.
in sci-fi you kind of have to have a certain level of realism to
Right.
it. That fantasy, you were like no holds barred, go for it, see whatever you want to do because it's your world.
And that's where I strive to make Trine Rising and the rest of the books in the Kandera saga very different. Yes, okay, maybe it's in the kind of medieval time period, but the characters are dealing with issues that are very relevant for today. Who hasn't been a teenager and you didn't know your place in the world? Or if you're a young man or a young girl and you're not you don't think you're worthy of the person that you love,
Mhm.
who if you're a parent terrified for the safety of your child. I mean, these are truths. Somebody who's an idealist and is trying to in a advocate is trying to change the world and end the war.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the antagonist is kind of an ends justify the means kind of guy,
Yeah.
but he has his own mores and his own sense of honor.
Mhm.
So he's very different. And that's another thing. We get to go inside the head of the antagonist. And he isn't just a two-dimensional Marvel comic, kind of
I
character.
My goal is if I can get you to understand and even somewhat like the
Yes.
antagonist,
Yeah.
then I have done my job.
Yes. And many people do. I'm so blessed when they say that about my antagonist. And the thing is, you read some of the stuff that he says, and like he's not wrong, really. It's just how it comes about to bring those truths out. So it's very interesting. But
Well, the journey is real is about the passion as much as it is about the journey. People know my journey. Basically, I used to write for my own kind of therapeutic, and they were my own books. I wasn't planning. I had like 30 to 40 books. I was not planning on publishing them. And then I met my husband, and we read the books together, because, sharing those books is sharing a piece of your heart. And if you have any type of anxiety at all, you're going to keep those suckers under lock and key. And so when I read them to him, and he said to me, he's like, we need to publish these books. He goes, the messages in them need to get out. And so he's been like my biggest cheerleader, my biggest supporter. And we jumped in, and we have not looked back. My sister was a little bit different. She was the planner. She had the butch paper up, post-it notes, that sort of thing. She took her 7 years, I think, to write one. She gave me the thing, and I said, why is this not published yet? Well, I don't know. I need to re-edit. I said, you've edited this how many times? 10? Why are you going to edit it again? Send it to an editor and be done with it. Get the story out. What did your journey look like? What made you, what were you before in the rural world, quote unquote, and what made you make the leap to author? Because we all know, we laughed in the beginning, authors don't make money from books. So what made you make the leap? It is basically, it's a, what's the word I want?
Labor of love.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly what I was thinking. It is a labor of love. But what made you make the leap?
I've always loved writing ever since I was a little kid. I'd make up stories. Like I said, I noodled around with a lot of Star Wars stories. Many weren't written down, but I'd play them in my head. So it kind of all just evolved there. And I always wanted to write. And it's so funny that you asked me this, because the real testimony is I was really being called to write, but I was in healthcare IT. I was a computer analyst for healthcare. I have a degree in clinical laboratory medicine. And I was sitting.
Leap into, that is,
I'm sorry?
leap going from IT to Renaissance.
And I was sitting in the training room. I had flown out to someplace to get some training. And I'm just like, oh my God, stick an ice pick in my eye. I can't deal with this anymore. And I'm looking out the window at the beautiful mountains. And I'm like, I need to be there. I need to be writing and looking at those mountains. And so on the plane flight home is where I had my actual dying to self testimony, dark night of the soul at 2:00 in the afternoon, 30,000 feet above Kansas. And it went on like, why aren't you, God's asking me, why aren't you pursuing this? I'm afraid I'll fail, like we all do. And he's like, do you think I would put you on this journey to fail? And I have had to bring that concept back, that prayer back every day. Every day for me. Do you remember Indiana Jones, the third one, where he's walking on a cliff and he has to take one more step and it's faith, and then he realizes it's an optical illusion and there's a rock bridge there. He's not going to fall. That's what it's like almost every day for me. And I wish it was a little bit more joyful. It's my part, not my problem, not God's, but every day is an act of faith and to go forward. I have this hashtag and this a concept that I call myself an unsuccessful quitter.
I'm following you. I got it.
It's allowing yourself, it's okay to fail. It's okay to feel small and unsure and, want to step away from it. We need that to gain perspective and to get a breath of fresh air. But it's that passion in me that, these stories, I can't let them go.
Yeah.
I can't. I try every so often. I'm like, I'm so done with this.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any easier. I'm sorry to say it does, but it doesn't. You just get used to working with anxiety. We talked before this and let you know, I'm currently working on a Christian sci-fi. I'm creating a genre that doesn't exist right now. So I am a sci-fi geek through and through. I will own it. I am a sci-fi nerd. Whatever title you want to put it on it, I'm there. I'm it. And so I'm like,
I'm doing the live long and prosper now, people. Imagine if you will.
I'm with you. So it's like you have to. I had to think as I'm writing it. I'm like, I could have thought, no one's gonna like this, no one's gonna care. But God and I have a deal. I'll put it out there. He'll give me the messages. I'll put it out there. He lands them in the hands of those who need to do it. So I will look at the reviews for a couple of reasons. I will pull some out that give me the encouragement on those days when I feel like, why am I doing this to myself? I don't want to do this. Those give me the encouragement to go, because those are the people I'm writing the books for. That's number one. Number two, for anything constructive, because there are destructive out there and you need to set them aside. I will tell you that right now. There's thin skin, thick skin, doesn't matter. They're going to try to slit you at your gut, and just ignore them, because the book wasn't meant for them.
Right.
You write the book that you want to read.
Yes.
And the message that's in there will reach whoever it needs to reach.
And I agree 100%. And by the way, that's such a beautiful sentiment, that what you have about your writing. For me, it's pure escapism. My stories are escapism. Yeah, there is a lot of tension, even extreme tension. But at the end of the day, it's an adventure. There's magic, those kinds of things. But I want to give people a really good story. And the time that they spend with me is an incredible gift. They're never going to get that half hour, whatever evening back. And I want to make darn sure that I have done my very level best to give them something that takes them out of their everyday lives, that, maybe they're having a bad day or whatever. And I want them to be participants, not spectators. Join Marana on her journey, cry when she separates herself from her love, her Teague, and worry along with Carl and Desde as they worry for Marana's life. And
I love getting those messages when I get up in the morning. Someone's really mad at me because they're reading the book and couldn't put it down. They didn't finish it till 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like,
yeah.
That means I hit your core. Those I love getting those, because that means that they were able to escape and the clock wasn't ticking in their head.
Right. I love it when you read and you don't even realize that you're reading. You're so invested in the story, and you're no longer seeing the words on the page anymore. One of my favorite authors is Jim Butcher. He writes fantasy. He also is probably best known for the Dresden Files, with the modern day wizard in, urban fantasy. And, there's sometimes, I'm reading along and I don't even see the page anymore. And I think, wow, that's the epitome. If I could bring something like that to a reader, I've done my job.
Well, I just want to encourage you, from somebody who's got 13 out. The first one is always the most terrifying. Don't be discouraged when the series is done. You're going to see a lot more of a jump. A lot of people want the full series out, so they're not like waiting forever and ever, kind of like watching Stranger Things, and season 4 has not been here for almost 2 years now, and we're all judging for it. A lot of times people will wait until the end of that to get it. So don't be discouraged.
Thank you.
You're not sorry.
If nothing else, that I really needed to hear that, because growth is so slow. And we'll be launching book 2 here at the end of the summer. And gotta do the pre, during, and post launch for that. Didn't make sense with the first book. Nobody knew who the heck I was. Right. But now that there is a little bit, and there is something out there, we've got to work on some hype. And so we'll see. But thank you. I mean, it's good to know, because I feel like I'm that lone voice in the wilderness of Amazon sometimes.
Yeah, and
your book is 187,000.
Well, at least I'm on it somewhere and it's in a chart. I have a number.
I have a number.
For those who want to learn more about you and your books and your fantasy world, how can they find you online?
Best place to start is certainly my website, ckdonnelly.com. Everything springboards from there. I'm on every social media you can find. Certainly Facebook and Instagram are probably my more active channels. I've just started doing TikTok, so
Bless your heart. I don't even want to touch that one.
I didn't, but I posted my first post, got nearly 500 views, and I was like, holy cow. So I'm working on that as well, and hopefully we should be having some events coming down the road here, so they can, and our events are usually free. If you want to buy a book after the fact, let's face it, that's the hope. We are authors. We need to eat somehow. But I like having the events free so people can kind of meet me even virtually and see what it's all about. And
Gotcha.
so we've got lots of things going on.
We're actually a little bit over time, but I was having so much fun, I didn't want to stop it. I'm going to give you about 2 extra minutes. Is there anything you'd like to add?
For me, my passion and my dream is being an author. That's how I express myself. For someone else, it could be they've come up with a new computer app, or they're going to bring to market their grandmother's spaghetti sauce. Whatever your passion is, God put that in you. God put that fire in you, or whatever your belief system is. That is something that you must share. That's why you're here in this world. So, don't let anybody dissuade you. It isn't like it's going to be easy. You're going to have to work. Just because you have talent doesn't automatically give you a bestseller. I mean, I'm sure you'll say, how many writing classes did you go to, and seminars to kind of hone your craft. Same thing with everyone, but you have that passion for a reason. That is what you're supposed to give to the rest of the world.
Yeah. I frequently say, your talent is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift to God.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Well, CK, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate you sharing your heart and sharing the world of world building with us.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
For those who want to learn more about CK Donnelly, you can find her at CKDonnelly.com. That's CKDonnelly.com. And thank you guys for listening to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson of CJPetersonWrites.com. Until next time.